here, now, present, in this moment, in every moment at all times, the wider perspective that you are, and ready to hear what's on your mind today. Go ahead.
Hi, WEOLA. It's me again. I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
Yes, go ahead.
Since our last interaction, I've had so much realization, which are delicious, but I'm still very much aware, very much focused on what is happening in the world, not just within me, within my family, but the whole world in general, and I'm very much aware of it. And I would like to ask WEOLA if he could give us a glimpse of what is in store for the world, what is in the vortex for the world, or is that something that is still continuously being created in the moment?
Where we want to start first is to acknowledge your stance of change. In other words, you said there's been an interaction, either in this format or something you've been observing, because everything is coming through. We would love to say that these interactions are really beautiful reflection of you, where you allow yourself to be in this perspective, wider perspective, as Kosta is holding it now, for all of you to have the questions that are not really as filled with opinions and thoughts and judgments and beliefs, but that for you to be able to soften those as well, so you can see more of that which you talk about and what is in store, or what is in vortex, or what is in the future, or what is becoming, as you're just saying. And so, before we get into other details and ask you for more specific things to talk about, we want to bring to your attention that your change of what you see showing up in your reality is always a gradual, incremental, and consistent experience. We're not talking about slower or faster. We're saying consistent, gradual, incremental. And then you choose the speed of it through your flashlight of attention. And so, as you've seen something in a different way and something feels a little bit more delicious or easy, it is inevitable that your flashlight of attention will be going to some of those patterns, in other words, to some of the parts of your whole creation where it's used to go. But now you have the other opportunity, because you've experienced some other stances. You've experienced softer thought, you've experienced softer emotion, you've experienced that which is consistently more steady, wider perspective, and you've seen certain shifts starting to take the place. And so we want you for this to encourage you, not to discourage you. We want for this to empower you, not to disempower you, because we understand that sometimes when you feel deliciousness of a wider perspective in interactions like this, where you feel that all is well, where you feel the naturalness of everything, when you feel like your thoughts are softer, when you feel better, when you feel fuller, when you feel love, when you feel the oneness, that the whole intention of everyone coming in to be beautifully collaborating in this experience, we understand that then you sometimes want to replicate it immediately into everything and hold on to that and have that exactly at every single point. And we say, in holding on to anything, regardless of how positive or negative it feels, you're holding on and introducing that which is resistance and introducing the opposite of that which you've been experiencing up until that moment. And so, understanding that the holding on process keeps that feeling stuck, or that thought to keep repeating, or that reality to keep repeating, we want to bring to your attention that the movement is really at all times the nature of what you're experiencing. And that you sometimes experiencing similar things over and over again is not because the movement does not exist, it's because your flashlight of attention keeps getting sometimes stuck or pointed in the similar or same space. And therefore you can be dancing anywhere within the whole creation process, sometimes in positive emotions, sometimes in asking the question, sometimes in tipping the point towards the answer, sometimes in tipping the point for the question. And so in any positive and negative emotion, regardless of if you're going towards that which is formulation of the question, leaving the question, getting to the answer, or leaving the answer to formulate a new question. And so this which you have experienced is happening at all times. So for as long as you have the movement of your flashlight of attention coming through and not catching on to some of those things you give your focus to as a longer term identity, you see that your identities are changing with where your attention goes, and all that you're really mastering, change that word, all that you're really wanting to experience when it comes to smoothness of your ride is to find the smooth transition from one to another identity that you're taking on while you're expressing your life force through your faculties. And so in that stance we want to celebrate with you this movement that you're experiencing, knowing that it's only the beginning of the newer stance, and the newer stance, and the newer stance, not only on this topic that you brought up, but on any other topic. And now we want, based off of what you've heard, for you to ask your question again.
Okay. The reason I asked that question is because I have observed that humanity has been largely distracted by the technology that they have in their hands, and they're no longer thinking in a way that we are designed to think. As Abraham would call it, we are sloppy thinkers now, because we are so locked in within us instead of interacting more physically with our physical world. We are sort of tunnel visioned into this little box, and our lives are now dependent largely on what's going on in that little box. So much of our time is being spent in that. And so are we still creating as humanities, you know? Are we still taking us to a more delicious level, if for lack of a better word? Are we creating?
As you are using this technology as something that keeps most of your attention, and you're using some of the words such as thinkers who are thinking only in one direction, we would offer you a different perspective on that. In other words, we would agree that it's not just the sloppy thinking, but it's the too much thinking that is going on. In other words, what's been happening as a shift in your humanity is that the body has been overused for so many years, and at the point of breaking of so many, the brilliance that was coming in were solutions on how to ease up the physicality of the work of the body, so predominant majority of people do not have to do it as much as they used to before. If you look in even few generations ago, several generations, maybe 100 years prior to your current timeline, you can see exactly that majority of people were physically so much more engaged, some to the point of breaking. And while that's still the case, that is not majority of people anymore. And so you were looking to develop different way to be efficient within your mind, to find solutions within your mind, to create the tools, physical tools, technologies to get you to be easier and easier and easier about this. But then you shifted it a little too much in a direction of completely exchanging what is the activity within the body, and that is what it feels when the balance is thrown off. And what we want to even more put accent on for you is that the balance is never really fully disturbed to the point of breaking. Balance is always regained, and sometimes it takes a moment. And what you're experiencing now, and you can see in so many parts of your world, is that there is so many places where this overthinking machinery, really supported by technology, becomes your only or predominant flashlight. And that is why you feel like everything that's in the palm of your hand is coming in. Content impression at all times, excessive content impression, and not so much balance with the nurturing of the body. So you dance between the faculties, so you dance between the identities of the roles that you're having at all times without really consistently being interrupted. And while that switching is happening at all times, the abruptness of switching that throws you off, and it brings so many to the place where their mind faculty is overused, is when you are not staying long enough on a topic at hand, but switching rather quickly and feeling like you are not the one switching it on and off. And so what you're experiencing is that point that some will feel like they used to with the body, coming to the point of breaking and releasing it and saying enough. Saying enough with this struggle that I've been having, this struggle and suffering that's showing up even in my body as a result of my overused mind. So as a different angle to sloppy thinking, we would say the amount of thinking, because it became over time the way out from another struggle. And while it passed that point long time ago, through that point of balance, the excitement of that coming through, as your physical body is at all times looking for basic needs for survival, your mind as well is there as assisting at all times, chopping information, analyzing. Well, now there is some momentum on that. Add to that the praise, add to that the praise to all of the wonderful experiences of your education and the thrill of discovering. We understand that since everything is in the palm of your hand too, it stimulates more of your mind. As everything at all times finds the balance, because every particle of the universe is consistently looking to that. When the cells leave your body and move on to become particle adjoined to something else from you, some of your particles turn and go into the earth, and some go onto the tree, and some join to another person, and some join to another animal, and some join to the cloud, and some decide to re-emerge fully into that wider perspective. As those shifts are happening, they're happening always to find that which is balance. And so we assure you that what you have in store is always better. What you have in store is always fuller. What you have in store is getting that which is shift for more and more to get to the new level of balance. When the balance is thrown off, it's coming back to it because it's in nature of everything that exists. And for some, that means that some of their major paradigms are being so strongly shifted that the structure even of their personality seems to be completely different. Those super engaged, mind brilliant focusers finding that they want to be in nature more, finding that they want to engage their body more, finding that they are seeing that they do not want to identify themselves so much with their mind and therefore with the emotion, that they want to experience other dimensions of life. And in that balance of you nurturing your body differently, your mind being softer several times even throughout the day, when you do get to put the flashlight of attention, it's a full thrill. Kosta had a very simple experience yesterday. He's been playing this game of full involvement. And when he gives attention to something, it can be very intense. Arman can testify to that in so many things. When he points his focus of attention, it's full on, it's full blast. And so when he does this dance between shiny thing, shiny thing, shiny thing, trying to multitask, trying to do so many things at the same time, he usually gets distracted. This program that is being about to be launched, that he's creating content for, he would be so excited to do it while he's doing something else that he would make so many mistakes and then had to redo it again. And this lesson that he is self-teaching himself to stay fully involved, sometimes it goes on days where he just continues multitasking because he gets into a very wide perspective in his meditations, as he's doing right now, and then he points his very strong focus because he's excited to go and see where it goes next, and discover that sometimes there is that movement. Well, yesterday he found an opportunity and he tuned everything off. He did not even check his phone or computer or emails or even talk to anyone in between his dance lessons, which he usually has a few minutes in between to spare, always trying to catch up on something, always trying to be more productive because it's exciting. Mind wants to solve the things. And then yesterday he let it all be. He let it all be for the duration of 4 to 5 hours. And when he came back, he was excited like a kid in a Candyland, that there was 20-something emails, not only 1 or 2 trying to play the catch-up, but 20 to see and check from. There were so many wonderful messages, and instead of checking in and out, he enjoyed so much the experience of re-emerging into the focus of that which is outside world through the social media and his phone, that he had the blast of experiencing. In other words, fuller involvement will get you there to find that balance, and that's where humanity is going these days.
Okay, I can relate to Kosta's focus on and full involvement in something, and I think I'm in that same place where I'm very, very much involved in this one particular subject that I can't seem to get my attention off it. And my concern is if I take my attention off it and just detach completely, I would miss something and I would not be prepared when something happens.
And so this example we just used is exactly for you. In other words, when you choose to give attention to this, the consistency and frequency of giving your amount of attention to this is what gives the thing. The frequency and then consistency. In other words, your mind wants to solve something. Your mind wants to gather the data so it can analyze and chop everything up to go to figure it out. But the way you figure it out is when you allow mind to pick up some of the data and then unfocus. When you allow your mind to go and test things out and start analyzing and start the process of analyzing, but for you to see the fuller picture, you go to the wider perspective by unfocusing or changing the subject altogether. In other words, being softer with your thoughts, taking a walk, not taking your phone, taking your walk, not taking your phone, appreciating, not looking into the news, having the meditation, not looking into the news. In other words, so when you do go to see it, you will get quicker through all of that sifting and sorting, making opinions, judgment and beliefs, and then going to the place to integrate it. You see, every time you observe through your physical senses, it is happening at all times. Whether you're aware of it through your flashlight of attention, of a conscious mind being focused somewhere, or through the brilliant senses of your body that keep you alive by consistently sensing and not sending you signals for it. You might even call that unconscious experience. In other words, everything that's automated within you, automated in a sense of brilliance orchestration of everything that happens in your body, tells you that day in and day out, because you have nothing to think about when it comes to that which is operation of your physical vessel. And so when you find the balanced time, knowing not that you do not want to at all give attention, but to allow yourself some break for what you've given attention to sync up, so your wider picture can come into the play, instead of question measuring, question-answer measuring. In other words, a layer of questions and a layer of softening so you can see what comes in as a reflection. In other words, when you're pointing and dancing ping-pong between the questions, there is not much time to reflection. And so when you allow yourself to soften it up, and we'll start with something like, I understand that this is a very important topic to me. I love that I'm so involved in this topic because I love people. I love humanity. I want everyone to succeed. I want everyone to feel good. I do not want anyone to feel like they're taken advantage of. I don't want anyone to feel like they're lied to. I want everyone to feel like they have the power in their hands to have their experience. But I also know that when I give too much attention to it, I don't make much progress. I just continue collecting the data, and oftentimes the confirmation of data I've already collected. So I will see, the moment I see that the data that I'm collecting is becoming similar or repetitive, I will unfocus. I will withdraw my attention from it and then come back to it. Because I want to next time to continue collecting different data. I want to see things from a different angle next time, and I know that the only way I can get there is by the process of unfocusing, to integrate the data I've had, to allow the resonance with that, regardless of how it feels, to get to the better, fuller feeling picture, and from there point my flashlight of attention to that same topic. We assure you, a little bit of practice with this, you will be able to see things from a different angle. You will be able to see less worry come your way, because you will see that everyone is going through exactly what they've designed for their own experience. That while you can shine the light on them through your own example of consistency in your focus and unfocus, that is really as far as your influence goes.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. On a personal level, still on this subject, but on a personal level, I have 3 sons, and I've always had great relationships with them. We've always been able to communicate very well with each other in a way that we can understand each other. However, until this subject came along, one of my sons is now on the extreme side of this subject. So we're on opposite sides of this subject. And now he is detaching himself from us, his family. And that hurts me deeply. And I get very emotional about it. And I know my emotions are telling me that what I'm feeling is my inner being telling me I'm going the wrong way. But it still hurts. It hurts so much when it is my son, when it is someone that I gave birth to and fed with my own body and nurtured and raised and educated, to turn against me in the way that he did. I was crying yesterday, but as I was crying, I could feel this knot in my solar plexus, and it was so painful, like it was a stab. And I understood what it meant. It was my emotion telling me, you're going the wrong way with your emotions. So, but how do I sort of marry that up so that I can still have a good relationship with my son and kind of bring him back?
Well, what we want to bring to your attention is, first, that from your wider perspective, we understand that you gave the birth and you raised this child and you educated this child, and the conversations that have been happening in relationship has been at all times consistent one, but it was never really just positive emotion experiences. There have been times that you were having things in opposite direction, but not so much so maybe on this topic that you have such an opposite, in other words, you have such a strong beliefs, such a strong pointed flashlight of attention in 2 different directions on the same topic. But that is really what the true meaning of expansion is. That as you were educating this child was educating you. As you were nurturing this child was nurturing you. As you were raising this child was raising you. In other words, we understand from the physical standpoint, this used to be a baby that you gave birth to and could not do much on their own, but with every action they've been doing, they've been teaching you as much as you've been teaching them. The responsibility of them teaching you was always the same for them as it is for you teaching them. We understand that from your contextual experience you might not be able to see that, but this mutuality is always like that. Whether it's your spouse, your family member, your child, mostly your child will be that person, that being that will get you really to work around what your limitations are. To work around from the limitations of seeing yourself as self and seeing them as another self, but seeing them as a reflection to each other. And furthermore, if you choose to get to that place through your tools of getting steady and practice and practice and practice, to be in a wider perspective of all inclusion. For as you have potential, like every focusing mechanism, every human being, to be that full-fledged human being, where you will feel this inclusion of your son, regardless of what topics you have at hand that you agree on and the topics that you do not agree on. So we will offer you these reflections from 3 different vantage points. And the first one will be where you are seeing it now, yourself as you and your son as someone else. I see my son as something different. I see that so far reflections that were coming through, in other words, I would see him as someone different who would agree with me or not agree with me. And predominantly I was blessed that my son was agreeing with me for quite quite a lot. In other words, the context that I've been nourishing and nurturing for my son were contexts that my son was accepting because they were contexts that was serving him well for that time. And while those were some moments of shift here and there, predominantly I remember agreeing with majority of things with my son, and my son from his perspective agreeing with majority things with me. And here comes this topic that we see completely different, and we feel like we're pulling apart because I'm seeing it from the stance of me as self, and my son is seeing it from the stance of self. In other words, I have my own truth from the perspective of me, and he has his truth from a perspective of him. And so while my physical faculties, my mind processing this information, and his physical faculties and his mind processing this information together are consistently so active that we cannot see further than our nose on this topic, in terms of being so cocooned in the self that we believe only one is true, until we start seeing that these are mutual reflections and move to the next layer of our experience. We will see how all of these years, even though without noticing it, we've been giving each other these wonderful reflections of reality, and therefore building our own new contexts along the way. I will see that because I've been observing my child in a completely new way than some other people, important people in life before, I've been getting new things and reflections. I've been getting things I was reminded of. I was reminded of how I used to be or where I want to go because I see my son moving in a different direction. I've been getting these reflections of me at all times, as well as my son was doing it while looking up to me as a role model and a parent. And so, even though not always aware, these reflections have been happening at all times. And I have an opportunity to move in and see that on this stubborn topic of us being on two opposite directions, there is an opportunity for each of us in the experience of self to find more balance and satisfaction, knowing that we all have a common thread. That we all have a common thread in a wider perspective. That if he is a reflection of me and I am a reflection of him to each other, that means that there is a common thread that both of us can see even in that next softer layer of integration. And I know if I continue to see that as a reflection, as a starting point of a new question, of finding discovery of that which is my natural state of love and ease and appreciation, especially with someone like my son, I can see that common thread. Especially with someone like my son, I can see that the thread is not only generated through a thought or through the awareness of energy, but even through the physicality of a DNA that we share. And so I know that from that point on, this wonderful teacher that he is for me, and me being a wonderful teacher for him, these kind of topics would get us to search, to be on a lookout and discover wider and wider and wider perspective of inclusiveness, where there is really not rights and wrongs, where those rights and wrongs are only minuscule, temporary moment in time where we launch off our direction of our flashlight of attention in a place of inclusiveness, that we celebrate that we're different, because without having different opportunities to see things from different angles, we would not be making all of these opinions and having so much ease about so many things. I know that I'm one with everything that exists, and I know that I'm one, therefore, with my son too, and no topic that can be thought of on so many different ways, in so many different directions, can find that which is detachment in my wider perspective, because that which is attachment is always on a wider perspective anyway. In other words, everything that you're experiencing when it feels the attachment is when you've been observing things from a wider perspective. And so your choice continues to stay there, as well as the choice of your son. And as someone who can sense this, with someone you care so much about, and having awareness of this, you can also check in from that wider perspective where the other person is from. Not to try to coerce them to get and see things from all-inclusive perspective, but to be that example. If you're the first one getting to that place and being consistently there regardless of the topic, by switching the topic when necessary, by going into talking about this topic only from the place of study, that eventually your son can see that too, even on this topic.
Okay. I've always acknowledged him as my most wonderful teacher, because he did teach me a lot of things as he was growing up. I learned so much more about life, about myself, by raising him, by the questions that he asked of me.
And now he is asking the question too. Now he is asking the question too. This might have been the most exaggerated question he's ever asked. And so this is an opportunity, not for you to try to eliminate this question, but to find your resonance of inclusiveness while this question is active. This is what truly means to be human. In other words, to have that full experience regardless of the topic at hand, regardless of even emotion of being positive or negative, and seeing it from that wider place of understanding, in being in that place of such inclusion that you take things as they are on the topic as they are being, until you start seeing it in a different light.
Okay. So what is he teaching me now when he says, I don't want to talk to you for 30 days?
That means that you are trying to convince each other that your angle is correct, and therefore both of you observing things from the place of self and separateness. And so then you want to say that, how about we do not speak about this topic for 30 days, but we still love each other on any other topic we have, because this topic does not define us. In other words, you want to start there, and you might need to be the one first biting your tongue to stop talking about something that's so important to you. But when the topic is so exaggerated with so many millions and billions of people on it, we understand that gets tricky. So someone has to hold the fort. And so if you see that you are that one closer to holding the fort, you hold the fort until your son joins you.
Okay. I'm not the one holding the fort, definitely.
And so when nobody is holding the fort, therefore everyone wants a little break, and that's okay too. You will find your way to bring your inclusiveness on the topics that can never be exclusive in nature due to the nature of your relationship with this lovely being. It takes just a little bit of practice. And so a little bit of practice will get you there.
Thank you. Thank you. So, I think that's all for me. But I had another question, now I forget.
It will come to you when it's time. Allow yourself to integrate what you've received. And
yes,
there will be plenty of opportunities for you to continue asking more questions. These are important topics to you because this is an important mirror reflection to you. And so as this mirror reflection comes to you, it is not something you can just toss and cover fully. And that's why we say those kids and partners and family members are the best teachers. You cannot really, it is not that you cannot run away from them. You cannot run away from reflection of you that point back to you, because is a relationship that matters to you. And so more questions will flow to you as you integrate this new knowing.
Okay, I remember my question.
Go ahead.
So if we're saying that we are the reflection of each other, a mirror reflection, then why are we such opposites?
Because everything that reflects back to you, imagine if everything was to reflect back to you the same. In other words, we know that sometimes you try to surround yourself by the ones that are reflecting the same to you. In other words, I want to see more of that positive emotion in you, from you and from you and from you. And you usually really need that when you're too much in a question. When you're in a place of so much question that you want to get yourself to the place of that which is steady, and then reflect back to you. It's a confirmation that you're good, getting better in the process of unfocusing, where this person and this unknown person and this person you care about about so much, reflects back to you more of that you see within. You always see that new knowing, let's say this knowing you're generating now, you're now experiencing within. Well, as you keep pointing in that part of your creation process with a little bit of consistency, more of that reflection will start coming back to you through others. In other words, what you see first is only the beginning of your experience. And that's why what we want to say to you and so many is that you moving from negative to positive emotion, you getting to steady is only half of your creation process. That's when the true party starts. When you get to start applying that and keeping the consistency, so the reflections that come to you reflect you more of that which is the goodness that you feel within, that steadiness you feel within, and then not only that comes in a form of reflection, but you go a step further where you see that you are the one reflecting back to yourself through the eyes of your son, through the eyes of your friend, through the words of your spouse, through the words of the person random on the floor, through the singing of the birds. In other words, there are layers for you, dimensions many call, that you can experience as you go more in a direction of inclusivity.
Okay, one last question. I worry a lot about the well-being of my family. So what is the value of worrying about my son's well-being?
Asking a question, and when you ask the question, to move to see more of that inclusiveness. Imagine when you can see that your son has a question or even discomfort, but you can see it from a wider perspective of knowing that all is well. Now that is really a powerful standpoint where you can keep, where you can have through your own practice for your son to turn and see that within themselves too. You cannot assert it to him, you cannot get into his self so you can shift that to him, but you can be so steady in your experience that he will get curious about how is my mom being so steady? How is my mom being so steady when I'm giving her so much trouble? How can she be so loving and inclusive when we have completely opposite opinions on this topic? I want to check in what's going on over there. And then in moments, with a little bit of practice, this will start the discovery of that which you have found as well. You don't have to be the first one to find it. He can be the first one to find it in this relationship. But if you're already in a path of seeing and getting these reflections to you, you might as well get on with this play and start playing it consistently.
It is so important for me that he sees what I see.
He will never be able to see what you see from a perspective of self. So if you are talking from him to see that from the lens that you see, that will never happen. But what he can see is a fuller picture of his own light shining through the lenses, not thinking that he is the lens, that he is the mind, that he is the body, that he is the emotion, but seeing that he is the light behind those lenses. And so that is really what you're saying when you say, I want him to see it from my perspective, not from your perspective of your opinion. You do not want him to have the same opinions. You want not to care about the opinions and still be able to see things from the first row of you being the light behind all of the lenses.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Really, really excellent conversations to start of this rather vigorous broadcast. Go ahead.
That was really wonderful. That was lovely. I want to come from the perspective, the opposite perspective of Teddy's, where I don't see any problems in the world. I see only wellness, and I do see people running around like they're a chook with their head cut off, worrying about this and worrying about that, and being upset about this and upset about that. I do see that. And I think to myself, what are you worrying about? Like, it really, and then people are upset with me because I'm not worried. And my question relates to, it always happens to me when I'm on these broadcasts that my question is built up before I even ask my question. I had this question before Teddy even mentioned it, but I'm Teddy's son. I'm on the other side of that. I am his son. And yesterday my mum called, and I actually was in the middle. I was working and I was in deep thought and I was working really focused. And in my head I said, don't answer that phone. But it was my mum, and I thought, I'll answer the phone because I know my sister's been sick again. Jen's been really ill again. And mum's been worried, so I answered the phone. And I heard her worrying about it could be this and it could be that, and they're doing these tests. And I listened to her for, it seemed like forever, but it was probably 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. And then she said to me, look, I'm really tired. I need you to call your brother and tell him all of this. And I said, Mum, I'm not doing it because this is all just rubbish. I said, you don't even know if there's a problem. You're making up all these problems. I'm not passing on the problem. And we ended the phone call like that, and I know she was upset. I don't want to hurt her, but I often, there's the other thing is she's very religious, and she goes, I'm praying for this and I'm praying for that. And I say, Mum, just see it as being healed. Just see it as being right. Oh no, you've got to pray, you've got to pray, you've got to have faith. I said, well, having faith is seeing it as being right. But my brother thinks I have autism because he thinks I'm not upset enough about my sister. And I haven't been upset the whole time. I've been trying to raise her. And even he said yesterday that sometimes, you know, he thinks some of it's in her head because she's so sick, and then all of a sudden she'll get motivated about something and she'll speak. Like she can't speak, and then all of a sudden she'll be as fluent as I'm being now, maybe even more so because she's an actual communicator. So my question is, I've heard WEOLA talk to people like this. They're very soothing. I can't do that. I don't know how to be soothing to people when I don't see a problem.
What we want to start with here is that there is the difference of you coming to study and finding your tools of study, and because of all of the variety you've been observing and all of those questions and the problems and solutions, you've developed the tools to get to the wider perspective. In other words, it is not that you do not see it, as you say, it is not that you do not acknowledge it, but you do not make career about trying to figure it out from the place of your mind. In other words, dancing wider, applying into specific, dancing wider, applying into specific, dancing wider, applying into specific. And so every time you're communicating with anyone else, most of the time you're getting into the place of that which is question formulating. In other words, when you interact with others, they cause you to ask questions, and you're causing them to ask questions, then that reflection most of the time is that which is generating some curiosity. Curiosity about more of that wonderfulness that you're receiving as a reflection from them, or curiosity to move from that which is not so satisfying so you can have more of that satisfaction in discovery. And so as you go and hold your steady, when you truly hold your steady, you're eager to go and to talk to these kind of people. And we do not want to rain on your parade, or we do not want to sound like we're raining to your parade. But when you get to the place of steady and the wonderful, you want to go and apply it. In other words, you do not want to diminish those questions, because for you to see and acknowledge the questions and move towards seeing more in reflection what you feel within, this is where the party starts. In other words, you found the tools to get to steady, and you feel within you all is well. You feel within you this wonderfulness, but it's still not reflecting back to you. And what we want to say to you, the reason why you are having these experiences is because you want more inclusiveness in that. You cannot make someone go to that place of steady, but you can also see these people as capable of getting to the place of steady. Not telling them, you are not steady, and I am steady, and I don't see it as a problem, and you figure it out like I figured it out, but you going into conversation with something like this. I feel so steady right now. I know my sister is doing well. I know she has this wonderful question answered in. I know even though she and all of us do not see all the clear value about what's happening and why, I know that there is value for each of us in this situation. For my sister with her condition, for my mother who wants her child to be well, for my brother who wants to take care of all of us, and for me who seem to sometimes have head in the sand. I know that having the head in the sand is the starting point to get to steady, because I need to quiet the mind, I need to quiet the physical senses, and I got so good at that I can find this resonance with what's truly happening, which is wonderfulness on all counts. And now I have a desire to move and see more of that on the other way around. For as your mother wants her child to be good, as your brother wants you to also feel good about things and your sister to be well, as you want your sister to be well, your sister also first and foremost wants to feel well. And so she's finding her own resonance and her own path, as you all individually do. But for you to get to the place of steady and then not include them in their own discoveries as well is what throws you off, and why you see some of these reflections more and more coming back to you. So all you want to do is, I will go and have this interaction now. I feel so steady. I know my steady will be challenged by this. I know that there are so many habits of thoughts and beliefs. My mom with her religion, my brother with his context of how you're supposed to worry for a sibling, and me with seeing this from this wider perspective of unicorns and butterflies flying around when no one can see them. And so I understand that this is the perfect mix for everyone to get what they're supposed to get. I know that I might be in this wider perspective, but I know they have access to it too. It is not that I want to say, I'm here, come join me. It is what I want to say here. See what's going on here and be on a discovery of joining. There is a huge difference in that. There is a huge difference in you expecting for them to come join you as it is for you to come to join them on their side. And so no one needs to join anyone, but you giving more attention from the place of steady, not worrying that that steady will be thrown off, as it seems so solid within you. It seems that the next layer for you is to keep that steady, and while the words are coming, you see exactly what those words are. Those words are your mother saying, I love my child, and I love you, and I love your brother, and I want all of you to be happy. I want all of you to be steady. I want to really see that by the end of my physical iteration, you're still here and happy and healthy and enjoying your life experience. That is my desire. This is what your mother is saying. And then you want to see your brother, as I see him as someone who is saying, I know that there have been these contexts of how we are supposed to act, and I'm acting on it, and I have stronger desire not to act this way as well. I want to be like you, sister. I want to be like you with my hand in the sand more often. I want to be like you, seeing things from a positive perspective, but it seems to be a little hard. And so I want to really get to that point in discovery of it. So bear with me, sister. Bear with me for a moment until I start seeing that which is discovery. And so once you see this, you see that there is no giving up of your steady reflecting back to you, while others are choosing to move to that, because everyone at all times wants to get to that place which is steady, as well as you want the new layer of it reflecting back to you even more.
Right, yeah. So, yeah, I also feel bad that I know I hurt my mum.
Well, this is what we're talking about. This is what we're talking about. When you feel so steady and see things wonderfully, and you keep that steady, you would not feel bad about your mom. You would not feel bad about your brother, because you will see what's between the lines. You will see what's truly happening over there. What you might feel uncomfortable about is that you did not have them to shift instantaneously in things that it took you some time to shift. And so do not focus on what they have not done, but the shift that they're making, because every of these questions is an inquiry for more steady.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm finished.
Really, really, really powerful stance that you're standing in. This is an opportunity for you to be even more inclusive than you are. Your brilliance in getting this steady for yourself is now, through these important relationships, getting you to start seeing it not only for the people that you care, but with everything and anyone you're giving attention, regardless of how wonderful or not wonderful reflection is. This is a unique tipping point for you, for your life will be changed forever for the rest of this physical iteration.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Go ahead. We're ready.
Just absolutely brilliant. WEOLA, I am just thrilled to be here because it's a weird time for me, and I'm happy to dance.
It is always a good time to have a good time.
It is always a good time to have a good time. So, okay, here's the deal. You've already said like very specific words that I had written down that I was going to ask you about. And you've already chose to use those words. So it just shows me that I don't even have to ask that question anymore because you've already answered it. And so...
we get in your head as in everyone else's head, and you get to experience it when you get out of your head a little bit too.
Yeah, and really that really is the thing. It's like, we are always...
it is literally like, are you out of your mind? And you say, for a moment, yes.
Yeah. It's like I give myself permission.
I give myself permission for mind to take a break. I appreciate my mind and the sharpness of it and the brilliance of it that keeps me alive, that solves the problems for my survival so much, that drives me to be so curious, so inquisitive about everything I'm observing. So not only my physical senses are having that, but I have double pleasure from asking those questions through the brilliant vessel of my mind. But I also know that like when I go to sleep and I rest my body, my mind as well also wants to chill for a moment, so I decide to get out of it, figuratively and literally, while I'm quieting my mind in a process of unfocusing for some time. Not for too long, because I love the synergy and being one with my mind, with the brilliance of it, but so just enough. So I keep things clear who is who in this relationship. Me, life force, my body, my mind, my emotions, vessels for my expression, and therefore my mind maybe being one of my best friends that is really on a borderline, an entry point for me to see wider perspective.
Oh, that's so good. And I had another couple of questions I was going to ask, and then everything changed as I kept hearing you speak tonight, because that's, of course, how this works. It's always in the moment. It's present. We want to be present. And I really wanted to ask you, how do I know you mentioned when you get repetitive, then you are now aware that maybe you're kind of going over and over something too much. So like, how do you know when you've reached a tipping point for sure, and now it's time to like switch gears? Because I feel like I know that I can do that, and it could be on any single topic, because I know that I have the strength and the awareness and the sharp, mental status to do it. And then there's also just a couple of moments sometimes where I'm like...
well, we'll give you a specific formula. We'll give you a specific formula we haven't given before in this very specific ways. When you start finding the ease and resonance on a topic through the process of unfocusing, you have that feeling within you first. And that which was your old pattern of giving flashlight of attention to a certain part of the creation process on a certain topic, let's say that this topic keeps troubling you and your focus is mostly in troubling part of that, not in the rest of it, because the rest of creation is happening. All the wonderful things on this topic are there, happening, dancing around. You just don't see them because you always choose to point in the same or similar direction between question and question. And so at some point you soften that up and you get to experience through the process of unfocusing this ease and resonance within you, and then you give focus and you go back there as well. It does not not feel as much though. You feel that there is the movement for you getting back to you. But how do you know when you're going to feel predominantly positive about something that you used to feel predominantly worried about? You know that when on that topic you start getting reflections from others to you, show you that which is the resonance you have within. That is when you know that you're on a way of predominantly experiencing it. And the way to really, really lock it in is, that does not exist, but we're using that analogy, to lock in that feeling of having it predominantly is to all include. In other words, this topic used to be a trouble, then trouble, some satisfaction within me. Now it's reflecting more back to me, which means I'm going back to predominant aspect. Well, now I'm so steady within that that I can go even to the old memory of it being a problem, or new memory of being it so positive, and it makes no difference to me because I include it all.
Always. It's always me. And I wanted to ask, because I had a recent experience, and it was, my dad, he's my best friend, and him and I, we've always communicated very well, and everything that you've talked about already tonight is like right on point with all of what just went down with us, because we always communicate very well, but we did have a misunderstanding, and
so that definition of a best friend is what you're learning a new angle for. In other words, best friend, someone you choose, someone you have such resonance with, someone that is reflecting back to you mostly those things you've already integrated and you're seeing the next layer of. Well, best friend is way more than that. Best friend is your family, in this case your father. Best friend can be that most important stubborn mirror back to you, and you wouldn't have it any other way.
Absolutely. Absolutely, you're right. And that's exactly how I feel. And it's like, it was really interesting to me because the last 3 years, he's an older generation. He's 45, I can't keep track of time, but he's like 45, maybe more years older than me, obviously. But his generation doesn't come from like the Abraham Hicks teachings and the law of attraction teachings. And, so I've been using this language with him for years. And in this recent couple of days, just a couple of days ago, and we had this little misunderstanding, he kind of like called me and he's like, Lindsay, let me just give you some advice. And so he started giving, how a father gives a daughter advice, right? And I was thinking, I was listening to his words, and he was using words that I have been saying to him over the last 3 years as I newly had discovered, Abraham Hicks and WEOLA and many other spiritual teachers. And he was reflecting back those words to me, and I was thinking, there is no way that he would have even known those words if I wouldn't have shared them with him. And I really felt this power in I made an impact on him. Those words actually stuck. And I know that, Abraham teaches words don't teach, life experience is what teaches. However, we can also influence one another in loving ways. And I just felt the power of, I didn't even know that I had done that.
What you are feeling, what you have felt in that moment, has really little to do with vocabulary and ages that you're living in. What you felt there is the mutuality in a relationship where you have always been equally parent to your dad as he was to you.
Yeah.
And this was just one of those many evidences.
You had earlier.
This is one of those many evidences that you can be on a lookout more as you understand that mutuality of teaching is only in giving attention, regardless of what is the physical or even blood relationship at hand.
Yeah, it's like what you give, you get back. And it doesn't matter who, where, when, what. It's like what you send out, you will get back. And so the last thing I want to ask is, Um, you said something earlier about you get to about 50% of steadiness, and that's when the party starts. And I just love that, because that is how I feel, and I want to know more about that.
Well, what we're talking about is when you develop the mechanisms to move yourself from predominantly seeing problems and questions from your flashlight of attention, you get curious a little bit more about seeing that sometimes you're at the breaking point and you release all of that, and then you find that you can, by releasing that feeling, feel more consistently that which is pleasurable, not even pleasurable, satisfying, joyful experience. You start seeing that those occasional joyful experiences that seem random to you, you can orchestrate. And then you're on a lookout of finding the tools to get you, for you, in other words, the tools or the training for you to be a conductor of your own experience. And so when you get to find those tools and you get to the place of wider perspective and finding this resonance and the tools to get into the place where no one else understands what you feel in terms of wideness within you and inclusion within you, well, that's oftentimes satisfying for so many, even to the rest of the physical iteration. There are so many who do not move from the perspective of self and do not feel like they have that which is control of keeping the reins in their hands about getting to the place of steady. In other words, they just take it as it is. I am like this, and this happens to me, and I have this many negative experiences, this many positive experiences, and this is just simply how it is, and no one has power over that. And then you start shifting it, and you find the power within that, but usually you get satisfied to get to that place and keep it kind of for yourself. In other words, not really with the application to the other side, not really of feeling so steady where you want to see that reflect back to you. In other words, for all the trouble of question, feeling that steadiness and love within you, and finding the tools to tune out the world and feel it is enough, and then you do not care if some question will come to you or you will go and ask for another question afterwards, because you know you always have tools to get to steady. But that is kind of just the next layer of what you could be experiencing, because as you get to that place of steady, and you recognize the power of getting there as well, you cannot not have more. And that more is you starting the party by looking for some trouble. And so when you go to look for some trouble, you see new layers of that which is discovery of that which you thought was just a finite experience of positive emotion. Your love is never the same love when you experience it next time and the next time and the next time, because in the next now and the now and the now, everything that exists reconfigures based off of your and everyone else's beautiful question-answer dance. And so this is what we mean by saying the party starts only when you get to steady, so you can look for trouble to have more steady, so you can look for trouble to have more steady, so you can be okay with opening the door on purpose for curiosity, for the question, that being the trouble. Not trouble being the problems and negative emotions, because you can get to the experience to live beyond them, because you do not keep making a difference between each of those categories of emotions, because you know that they're all equally beneficial to your experience.
Yes, that is absolutely, absolutely. And I have this thing where I say, you know, whatever I look at, no matter what experience I go through, or, you know, something happens, or, you know, you just kind of life, whatever, I just have this thing where I say, oh, and this is a new thing I've created. And it's just, I say, okay, all right,
Go ahead, we're ready.
Hi, WEOLA. This is my first WEOLA experience. I guess I've been really happy with, you know, talking about steadiness. I've actually been really happy with my steadiness, and I understand last year in lockdown, I stayed with my mom, which I never, ever, ever thought I would do. And we actually ended up really good, but I really worked on myself, and we ended up just rolling on the floor and listening to sound bars and things like that, things that I never thought would happen. And then this year, I've kind of, you know, my business had to close and it's sort of scaled way down, but I'm actually really happy about it. I don't know. I'm just so happy, and I'm happy with my steadiness. And I'm listening to you all, you know, talking to different people, and I'm also like, you know, everything's going to be fine. Everything's fine. You know, if you can just relax, everything's fine. I guess I've managed to manifest a really, really good sort of interim place to stay, and I'm safe, and you know, I've got great food. There's chickens and there's all these veggies in the garden where I am, and wonderful, wonderful people that treat me like family, you know. And so I think I'm in a really good space to now manifest my dream place. It's almost like I wouldn't say to zero, but I went, you know, it's kind of stripped of everything. And now it's almost like the blank canvas, but I'm actually in a kind of happy, stable place because I'm probably can give it time, divine time. I can give the divine timing, I think. And I actually I like where I am, even though this is not ultimately where I want to be. I'm actually really enjoying it. So I just wondered if I could just kind of talk about that. I love these chats and I feel it's so beneficial, you know, if you can tap into that. And
what we want to start with you is that you have found and used an opportunity for a different thing, not to go with the mainstream talk about the topic, and you found your own way about it, something that's been throwing off quite a lot of people. You've seen it from a wider perspective because you have the tools to get to unfocus. In other words, you said, I will simplify things, I will see how it goes, I will go with the flow, and I will see where that flow is taking me. And that flow is taking you to the place of so much ease and resonance and satisfaction that now you feel like you're getting a little bored. In other words, you want to move that in a direction of that which is next for you. For what it seems, what it is that you're saying is you are getting to the place of revisiting with that which is desire, which you covered for some time. In other words, you cover the desire, manifesting of that which is the next and the next and the next place. In other words, you've seen that wider perspective picture. And then from that wider perspective picture, you've sometimes been focusing on a gap. We like to say you observe and choose, and get the clarity of what you want. And sometimes in keeping the focus on that which is what you want, desire, manifestation, that place, that feeling, that experience, sometimes you are more aware of the gap than you are aware of actually discovery of that which it is. And we say, allow that clarity of wanting to be released. We call it a tipping point. The tipping point where observe and choose, clarity of wanting, is released, and then you can be on a lookout for that discovery. And sometimes you really like to keep the eyes on the prize. You're observing and choosing, but you then keep the clarity of the wanting. But we want to bring to your attention that your attention to something that you want, even though moved you in a direction to have it, it's still not that. Your clarity of wanting and focus on wanting can bring resistance to it. No matter how good it feels in the beginning, it may bring that resistance. And so what you're saying is, I've had this clarity, and then I've been looking for it for some time. And then I released, not really even looking into it for some time, because I was focused on a simpler life. I was focused on having the experience of raising the chickens and having the time of my life with my mom, which I never thought I would. And in being present more in the moment, I've been checking in with this desire, but not as often. But now I've said it to myself, and I'm aware myself that I'm so steady in my experience of seeing how little I need to be alive, how little nourishment I need, how little bit to nurture my body, a safe place to stay in a shelter, and that everything I give to my attention to is the bonus experience. And then now I'm getting really worked up in a most positive way, excited to see what is the next thing, what is the next bonus level I'm going to open up, what is the next layer I'm going to open up on my way to some of these, which I call bigger manifestations, while knowing that in order for me to receive something in my physical experience, I want to embrace it as normal. I do not want to look at it as something big. I do not want to look at it as something grand. I do not want to look at it as anymore. I want to get closer and closer and closer and closer to it. And we say the way you get closer and closer and closer to it is that you choose how often you check in with that. How often you check in with desire. Do you check in with desire from the moments when you're asking questions, which you're inevitably asking every day, all day long, or you revisit it after you quieted your mind? Do you revisit it after you feel so steady? Do you allow your mind to go in that direction as the very next first thing, as you're opening the door for the new questions to come through? Which is this desire? When do you see it? After you've been easy, after you felt steady, after you felt so at peace, before you go to turn it more up with the next questions. When you get to look at some of these experiences from that place, where you do not force it, but where you see it on the heels of your steadiness, rather on the heels of your figuring it outness, that is the time where you see less and the less gap with it, and the resonance with that becomes one. And that is usually when you discover it in your reality.
Wow. Yeah. It's funny. A lot of things that that I wanted to manifest, of everything, this, like having this dream place where I can invite all my AIM friends or my WEOLA friends, or, you know, like-minded people from around the world to come and stay with me in Sydney on the harbour. You know, this is my dream. And it's funny, whenever I think of that vision, I've always felt good, you know, which is a kind of a step up from other things I wanted to manifest. So I've noticed that. So I do try to only think about it when I'm in a good place. But what I've noticed is when I'm daydreaming about it or giving that little time to it, I'm not as overexcited as I was. I'm starting to, and I started to go to wonder about that. And then I thought, oh my God, is that becoming my new normal? Because I'm not
It is
overexcited.
becoming, for so many of manifestations, you're ready to hear this. So for so many things that you desire, you get closer and closer and including them. And sometimes you realize that all you wanted to do it is included in you wanted to get the resonance with something. And for some of them, you don't even care about manifestation. But for some of them that are really big for you and you want to really physically to experience them, that means that you're getting closer and closer and closer. Whereas when you are so excited about something, you're excited about the clarity of what you want. You've been there observing, choosing, hitting the head against the wall, making preferences, and now you made the preference. And now you still sometimes have some question about it coming through because it's not there with you, for you, but not as often. And if it's not as often, and if you really revisit it every single time from that place of ease and satisfaction, you can see more and more of that which is not a goal dream house, not even daydreamed house that you're trying to hold on to in your vision and therefore trying to pull it down into reality, but you're just dancing with it because the resonance is so clear. The resonance of that which is the idea is so clear. The lovely experience of you interacting is so clear, and it becomes more and more and more natural and normal, that usually when you have it within your experience, you can track all of those steps behind that we're in a place of your discovery. And then you get a whole new experience of excitement, because then it's happening like it's happening for the very first time, which is not true, because it's been happening all along of you finding more resonance and more resonance. It's like this desire is further up here from you. And then you are really including more and more of it and more and more of it until you include it too into your experience. That is all that really happens at all times.
Wow. Wow. Okay. I just really felt that when you said did this, and then now you're including it in your experience. I look forward to that.
We're looking forward for you to invite your friends at your dream place, but not only like-minded ones, but through your exuberant levels of inclusiveness, anyone who will benefit from interacting with you and that wonderful space too. Really, really, really brilliant conversation.
Wow. Wow. Thank you. I probably finished with my ex about 2 years ago. We didn't actually break up, but he got very angry because I went on another Abraham cruise. But I know it wasn't actually about that. I think it was the fact that I started to not talk to him about stresses or problems. I started to want to nurture the relationship a lot more and clean up my own stuff on my own and only have happy times with him. But I think that he started to wonder what was going on, that I didn't need him. I think it was something else that happened there. And I think that me going on another cruise, even though I wanted him to come with me, he didn't want to come, was the excuse. But
this is what happens in many relationships when one gets on their own path of self-discovery and they put all the attention to it. In other words, as you were doing it, someone that's your partner that has a huge value, the interaction with this partner, like with everything else you've interacted before through your flashlight of attention, got to that place to make that move, got you to the place to make that shift. And we understand that if these topics were happening and you want to shift, we understand your side and we understand his side as well. Here you are saying, I do not want to be in this. In other words, I want to have less focused time and more unfocused time. I want to get through my tools. I want to develop the tools. And you've been developing the tools to get to steady. But then because that steady was happening within you only, and because you were new to bringing that steadiness to you, you were not ready to include him from that place of wider perspective. You were not ready to include him there because you were practicing at the same time. You would come around. There is a way, and it can be a way, where you get to the place, maybe not in this, but in some other relationship, when you notice the same thing, for you to be as inclusive of what you are as well, because that is still the part of you. It will always be part of your life to go and observe the variety. And we're not saying to continue playing the ping pong with the question, 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 question. But as you're moving question, answer, you will inevitably be in that question. And in the moment of question, when you are in question, you want to include this person too. And then you say, it's been enough, I'll take a moment, and then go and unfocus, even though they're not doing anything. And in your practicing that, still including them in the questions, because you cannot eliminate the questions, you do not want to eliminate the questions, you will eventually become so predominantly there that even if they're not doing anything about their experience of that, you will feel like you can have more of these conversations about the questions because they're not going to be throwing you off. But what happens with the most is I'm on my path and you're on your path, and now I cannot give you attention because I'm afraid you're going to throw me off from my path too. And so what you want to have is the balance. And now you've had that experience. You will never go back to that experience. Your experience cannot be anything less than inclusion. And therefore, the hint about the house we just mentioned to you moments ago is that you do not want to surround yourself only by people that are like-minded and bringing to you only reflection of that which you already know. The way when you do get to experience more of that reflection coming to you, then is the time for you to include all of these questions and all of these wantings and all of these desires as well. And you do it by continuously knowing by knowing within you that if you found the resonance within you to get to the place of steady even once, you can do it at all times. And then it becomes this wonderful dance of you not even being able, not even having desire to look if someone else you're interacting with, especially those important people to you, those not only love affairs, but life partners, those parents, the children, the friends that you really care about so much. In other words, those relationships, you're able to see them from your wider perspective applied, and therefore it does not matter to you if you meet them in the question or in the answer, because you know the value of all of it, and all of that feels wonderful to you.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. It's funny, we haven't really been together for 2 years, and I just have started really also daydreaming about my partner, the partner that I want, and also on, manifesting that. And I've been having some really good dreams, actually. Like I have a partner who's holding me and things like this, and I've been having really good daydreams and actually feeling really good about it. And then just all of a sudden one day I just woke up, I'd had a dream about my ex, and I woke up and I was so upset, and I started
and
to
so
really
this is the next
grieve.
layer for you. This is the next layer for you. The next layer for you is you found that resonance. It took you some time to find that resonance. And when you did find that resonance within you, it maybe took you a couple of years to get to the place of steady. Well, now that you're in steady, if you were to be needing to have more only of the positive resonance, you will be getting only those positive dreams of encouragement and love and appreciation. And while you know that life partner is that, your ex is reminding you also what the life partner is the most stubborn mirror that brings you the most experience of expression and expansion. And you having both is really what you're looking for. You're not looking for a partner to give you only trouble and keep you in the question, but you're not looking for the partner only to reflect back to you all this loveliness. You're looking to mix it all up, because in mixing it all up, your flashlight of attention does not get stuck in one way or another. You're not holding on the question, not being able to release it, but you also do not experience positive emotion trying to hold on to that positive emotion, because in holding on, you're again introducing resistance and you're back to question anyway. But you're just cruising and cruising and cruising between all the wonderfulness that you're having, because that's really what you came to experience. That is the true definition of what really a perfect life partner is. And so is that going to be your ex or someone else? You want to include resonance of your daydreaming of some trouble too, as well in that. You want to mix it up. And when you get that partner that is so, when you are ready to include all of the aspects of all the other people like that, knowing they're all giving you the value, well, then your party is really just starting.
Wow. That feels really good.
You're ready for it and excited to do. You've done your work. You've done the work of things, how to get you to the place of steady. You know that no matter what question comes through, you at all times have the tool to get there. You know how to temporarily cover the mirror, but you also know that no mirror can ever be fully covered, always covered for the rest of your physical iteration. For as if it does not come that way, it's going to come out through someone else, different faces, different places. And so now you have the tools to get to steady. And now when you have the tools to get to steady, really everything that exists is your oyster, not really just the world, because everything that exists, because you're dancing through these perspectives. And there is no fear that anyone will ever throw you off more for you to be curious through the question with occasional discomfort. Why not?
Wow. Thank you.
Really, really, really excellent conversations. Bask in this place of brilliance you've been discovering and all of the reflections you brought to yourself in this interaction. Really, really great talk.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's fantastic. Thank you. I'm good.
Go ahead. We are ready for more. Go ahead.
Hi, WEOLA. I'm so happy to be here. Just wanted to share the curious and delicious experiences I've been having since I attended the first session with you, and would like to have your thoughts on that. After the first Australian session, although I intellectually understood your messages, I felt that I needed to get used to or understand your language because I'm so used to Abraham Hicks languages, but I wanted to understand and get used to WEOLA languages. So I listened to the recording a number of times and watched YouTube a number of times. And, I started to get used to your language, the words you use. By the way, I love the looking for trouble. It makes me feel like those mischief looking for trouble for the new things. And that on a Saturday night, I decided I usually go to bed really early because I usually wake up early to watch Abraham Hicks broadcast, but I felt that it's a bit too much of the effort, so I decided to not attend and stay up late, and went to bed late, fell asleep, but woke up pretty much straight away and stayed up all night for some reason, but I wasn't restless or anything. I just stayed up, and before I knew it, it was before 4 o'clock. So I thought, oh, I might just watch Abraham because I'm awake, and watched the broadcast. And it felt to me, it was so much clearer than before for some reason. It's not like an intellectual understanding, but it just felt the message was so much clearer to me. And I was wondering, what is that? And I got the word saying vibrational understanding. And that was the word I received. And that day, although I didn't sleep much, I didn't need to have a nap or anything. I was quite energized. I had a day as usual. And somehow I thought next morning, I have a WEOLA session from 5 o'clock Australian time. I don't know why I thought that way. So I booked the tickets and I went to bed early and woke up and just watched I looked at the clock. It was 4:44 and just, oh, 4:44. And so I woke up, turned on to the channel, and while I was making coffee, I heard Amanda calling my name, Miss. And then I was like, oh, Amanda's calling. And then I realized that I was 2 hours late. They were wrapping up the meeting. But I didn't feel that I missed out anything, or I didn't really feel that I missed out something. I just gone, oh, well, I don't know how I got the time wrong. And then since I was awake, I just decided to stay awake and watched out the window, and I just felt this delicious morning stillness, like when the world is just about to wake up. And it was like, oh, just was so delicious. It's just so quiet and silent and still. And I'm thinking, oh, this is so nice. And why don't I wake up early morning more often to feel this way? And I had such a lovely, lovely day. And in that afternoon, I was led to watch YouTube. Oprah Winfrey was interviewing Maya Angelou, and she was explaining about her mentor asked her to recite the word, God loves me. And I'm not religious or anything, but while she was reciting God loves me, she started to cry, saying it humbles me, thinking that created world and you and me loves me. And then I started to cry as well. And it was such a beautiful experience. And all those delicious things are happening one after another. And I was wondering, what's happening here? It's so fun and I like it.
What's happening is that you've had a certain way of reflecting back, that which you called one kind of language. Your friend has another language, your partner has another language, your business person has another language, your store that you go to buy groceries has another language. In other words, all of these are reflections back to you. And for some of them, you're used to having a language to get you to the wider perspective, as brilliant Abraham Hicks it is. And so as you were used to hearing it, at some point you were ready to put another mirror reflection in front of you, and you got curious about this format, as you can get curious about any other format in the future. And so sometimes the steadiness and consistency of one language keeps the certain things going and keeps you going in a certain direction and keeps you consistent and disciplined and allows you to have it. But when you're ready to experience it, something else, you want to have more of those reflections back to you. And so everyone that is receiving from a wider perspective, like Kosta does, or anyone else who has the ability, who's developed the ability and has desire to allow you these reflections to do it, the languages are coming through for you to hear it from a different angle. And sometimes, oftentimes, you can hear it from a different angle from the same speaker, but sometimes that mixing it up can get from another angle too. For some people, when they're testing and they're not ready, it might be confusing for them because they're looking for more of consistency within the same person. Kosta and Armand have been reading and enjoying Abraham Hicks only for about 4 to 5 years. And Armand was also looking at this and that thing. Kosta, since they got introduced to it, has read only the one different book from a different author. Armand loved to read it more, but Kosta got only that one, which was very much in resonance with that, from curiosity, from a rendezvous that he had, and then moved on until he was listening to other people too. This guru or this life coach or this singer or this tennis player. In other words, he started seeing these reflections come through from so many different places that he decided to include more and more and more. In other words, he would seek for profoundness in everything he's been observing as he was doing all of his life, but now with more layers to it, now with more talk about it. He would share with people these reflections, and therefore deliciousness from that knowing that was coming from all these examples, whether the message is in that wider perspective only or integrated and reading between the lines. And so it came this desire to have even wider and more knowledge, and therefore what you're experiencing right now in this flow. And so what we're saying all of this to you is that when you get steady, as we were talking to a friend before, you use the tools to get to steady. And once you develop the system of getting to steady, then really you start to look for trouble and looking for different reflections from different angles, because every other person and everything you observe is a different angle of you. And not only that, to see different angle this time and then this angle this time, you start putting so many angles simultaneously in variety. And that's why you see that those artists love to have big audiences, that those sports people love to have those big audiences. They're ready to get more of that reflection. Sometimes because they're so focused in a question that feels is the way to go, they're trying to figure it out. But oftentimes because they really want more mirror reflections of them. What is coming back to them? Love is coming back to them, sometimes criticism coming back to them, questions coming back to them, answers coming back to them. But when you get the tools to get to the place of steady, you are choosing exactly how many more mirrors you want in front of you. And therefore, that which is the brilliance of you from wider perspective flows to you and through you at all times through all of those mirrors that you put up. What feels to you in the amount of deliciousness is that you put some other mirrors in front, that you found a different flow that has that, and that you do not have to choose which one is more beneficial. For as you could see, as you went back to the flow you're used to, that you have more and more resonance. But you are choosing how many of those angles you can handle and it's beneficial without throwing you off at the time.
Thank you. That's very interesting. And then I love this flow of the conversation as well, because I was led to the book called The Rise of the Superman, and they talk about the flow. And Oprah Winfrey talks about the flow, and they talk about this state of being, especially for those who's in this extreme sports, they get into this flow state to achieve something like unthinkable. And that doesn't sound to me like meditative state, because they are in action.
This is exactly what it is, because you cannot create new if it's thinkable. It has to be wider perspective, so it's unthinkable, which means you get to the state of flow that your mind is not as active, that your body is not as active. Even though your body can be physically active, your mind softens up because your mind is a gateway for you to be in a wider perspective. So the only way to get to unthinkable is to soften up the thought. And that's what meditation gives you. That's what the place of so many tools of appreciation gives you. That's what the sports will give you. That's what so many different brilliant tools are putting you, not in the zone, but in the flow. They're putting you for you. They're not creating flow from you, because there is never really stuckness, but getting you to the softer place of your physical complexion, that you can really be aware of the flow that's happening at all times, regardless of you sometimes seeing it or not.
That's so delicious. So for us to get into the flow, is that meditation is the best tool for us without jumping off the helicopter?
Anything that will get you to the place of softer thought and softer sensing and data collection through your physical body. In other words, you can be in a full-on physical activity. Kosta loves to play tennis. He could play for a couple of hours, and the moments he sits after the tennis, he has the same effect sometimes as for an hour and a half of the deep meditation that he does. And sometimes he does that by appreciating others. Sometimes he would do that by writing. Sometimes he would do that by having the place of having so much focus and choosing to remove it. In other words, there's infinite ways of you getting through it. But the gateway for that is your mind being in a more blurry, zoomed out perspective. And to get to that, oftentimes connection with your breath allows you to have that. And how you're going to become more aware of your breath is all these other activities that get you to it. Which one it does allows you not to breathe automatically, but to become one with the breath that your body is looking for, and then softly starts directing it. For that is the gateway for you to be in a perspective of where you see that you're not the mind, the body, and the emotion, but the light behind it coming through those brilliant lenses of experience.
Thank you. That's so great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Really, really excellent conversations today. No wonder you've blown up 2 computers for this particular broadcast and they're not wanting to cooperate. Go ahead. We're ready for more.
I'll try and be as cool as I can to keep the phone working. Only kidding. Who knows? So
we hope you have a bucket of ice.
Yes, I do. So great to see you again. Money. It's funny. I've been working a lot.
Money is funny. Let's start there. Money is really funny. And so?
I've been doing a lot of great calibration work with Gina, you know, all that beautiful work that she's doing. And I was trying to figure out how to actually formulate this question. And it came to me that I used to feel I haven't worked for a year, and we've spoken about this a few times, and I know I can improve my steady and I can do a lot better on that, but that's all cool. But I'm also getting to a point where I don't feel like a fear and anxiety necessarily about it. I kind of, and it's a little uncharted territory, which is cool. But I also know that I'm going to have to, well, I don't know. I need to improve my steady, and I want to figure out the balance of in that steadiness. I don't necessarily want to focus on the problem per se, but
how about when
yeah.
while you're still in a place of not working, as you say, while you're unfocused from work and not looking to do anything else, you choose anything that gives satisfaction to your attention, and from there start flowing some money. In other words, it does not matter if it's tiny thing, it does not matter if it's anything little. In other words, you do not have to have identity of your career or identity of how you're used to flowing the money in order for money to start flowing. In other words, now when you have the playtime, explore. Now when you have a playtime, make something, even if it's a pocket money, make it from fun. Go into the place where flow of the money is funny, where the money is coming with the funny kind of way. In other words, sell a couple of shirts to your friends, or find some kind of volunteering work that will provide you some kind of tip. In other words, do anything to start feeling this resonance now while you don't have pressure of still having to make some kind of money. And once you get to that place of that flow of the money being funny, or how funny is to make any money, or how funny is to make little money, you will then start to see that it's funny to make more money too. And so then it will not matter to you what career are you going to have to come back to. Is it something that you did not like and now you want to change, or the whole new world of possibilities of how you flow that which is an important tool for you as an exchange only that come to you. And so the suggestion is always, especially when you move, make these strong, big strides of shifting the focus for it where it used to be, where you felt trapped, like you cannot move, you cannot move, you cannot move. Well, now you moved. Now you have an opportunity to see the movement. Now you do not want to only see the movement in theory. You want to experience that movement while you have all of this time and start moving and molding into something new. And then you will see that regardless, even if you go to the old career and old job and old position, it will feel like completely new and more money will fly through. Or you will find that all these new things that you're experiencing are blowing your mind, because that's what you do. You blow your mind, you get out of your mind, you allow your mind to be softer when you're more in the flow and less in the pointed place of focus.
Yeah. And I have been doing work on calibrations to move away from the old career and feel comfortable with moving in a different direction.
And now it's time for you to see that there is nothing to move away from, that was you covering the mirror for a moment, being okay to cover that mirror for a moment. But now when you're finding more and more steady, allow your flow to start getting in. And then eventually the flow is going to become such a comfortable tsunami for you that those curtains from all of those uncomfortable mirrors will start flying off the handle, because you will not care how uncomfortable something used to be, because you'll be able to see it from this perspective.
Okay. And when I do get into, when I'm writing or something and I'm kind of just thinking about money, I've often thought, I just feel so natural to just have a whole lot of it, you know, like win something, and just, it kind of feels like it often makes so much sense to just tune into that. That's funny.
Well, what we want to bring to your attention is that when you even download that, which is what would be the sufficient amount of money. Let's say from your perspective now, let's say now we're granting you now to receive this amount that is good for you for the rest of the living. In other words, all of the things that you now see that you want in your lifestyle, you are covered for it for the rest of the life. Well, what happens right after is that as you find that is taken care of, you will be looking what is more, what is more, what is more, and your standard will change, and therefore you will want more money. And then you will get more money for that, and then that will change, and you will want more money. And you will understand that it's never about the money. It's about where are you giving attention to while you're giving attention to, regardless if you're getting money for exchange or a smile for exchange or nothing really for exchange, which usually puts you in the awareness of that full inclusivity, when there's no really expectancy for anything to come back. Only wonderfulness can come back because you're in the now, in the now, in the now, in the now, in the now. And so all of this chat we're having is for you to be now more practical, for you to experience more and think less, for you to bring less of that awareness, even if the money is funny or not. In other words, the attention on that will come to flow. For us, if you organize, even within the first 2 to 3 weeks time, to do exactly only what you want to do, one after another, with full involvement to it, the movement is going to start coming through and opportunities will start showing up. For as you have an opportunity to practice the flashlight of attention, being on a desired topic for a longer period of time. Well, once you organize that, it will not matter to you how money is coming, and it has to come for the exchange of that, which is resonance for you to be in the now, in the now, in the now, in the now. And then you will get surprised for how little or how much money you actually need for what you're experiencing, because all of the things that you're thinking about when it comes to money is to provide you with opportunities to have that which you're giving your attention to become wonderful. Well, once you took care of that without the money is bonus, and all of the experiences flowing through it are becoming more and more and more and more and more. And then you find yourself sometimes desiring so much, sometimes not needing any, because what you took care of is this place of discomfort exaggerated into fear. And now you're dancing in a range of curiosity and wonder.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. That's all.
Really, really, really excellent conversations. Go ahead. We're ready for as many questions as you have.
Jasmine?
No, I've had to unmute myself. I've just been speaking. Sorry. First time listener here. Thanks for having me today. I am a psychic working on my medium skills to interpret them a little bit.
We do not hear you.
Jasmine, you've got muted again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. First time listener, thanks for having me. I work as a psychic and a medium. I'm fine-tuning my skills now to get better and better at interpreting the energy that comes through as a medium. I have two questions. One was, what are your thoughts, or what are your thoughts on mediums and psychics? And second of all, how is it better for me to interpret that energy that comes through from these past loved ones, or the ones who have croaked and passed over?
Well, first we'll start in a place of knowing that regardless of what do you are always reflection to someone that you're interacting with. So what you're saying is, I want to be in a place where my thoughts are so soft, so easy, that I feel so steady that I can tap into the wider perspective. And the person coming through can have the experience to have reflection of what they are ready to experience as next, but maybe cannot sift and sort through their own thoughts and feelings at the moment because they're so focused. In other words, you're building the skill of unfocusing, as Kosta is doing right now, as everyone is tapping into those moments multiple times throughout the day without even knowing. Every time you experience positive emotion, you're in that wider perspective. But what you're looking for, you want to have that skill that you can bring yourself to that perspective and stay there for as long as you want, for a certain amount of time, for as long as it feels good to you. For as when you are in a wider perspective like right now, your thoughts and feelings and emotions and judgments are not active. In other words, your focus is so softer while your physical senses are so alert. So you can take in the data, use your speaking and listening and sensing and observation through your physical senses that Kosta is now doing, even though you're on a different part of the world. In other words, for you to be in a softer place of inclusion of everything and everyone that is bringing the questions to you. And so what that does is you having the intention and desire to feel steady and to be in that place and allow others to see anything you give them, not as a something dogmatic, not as a something as their destiny, not as something even as the only way to go, but to allow them to see that wider perspective and then find their own discovery about where it goes. In other words, you will say, here are the predispositions based off of the place, but the choice is always yours. This is what I'm perceiving, but the choice is always yours. Yeah. This is what I'm seeing, but the choice at all times is yours, because no one can be in your discovery. I can just be a reflection of what you're ready to hear next. Whether through this, I'm causing you to ring the question marks and that starts discovery, or whether you feel like the resonance of an answer is flowing while you're interacting with me. In other words, when you are ready to be this steady place for others, you also sometimes want to have and be only answer for them. And so that has been really a big thing. It is a big thing, but it's equally important to ask questions as it is to receive the answers. And so for some, that which is comparison from what they know within their intellect and focus so much, or from they've been experiencing with others, may make them question mark. And you might not bring them the answers immediately, for as they are receiving the answers for within. You're creating space for them to discover the easiest way at the moment to receive what they already have within. And we see that this resonates with you and that you know so clearly what's going on when it comes to that process. All it takes is your joyful ride in taking care of your body, in taking care of your physical vessel, of finding that which is the balance between your activity with your intellectual mind, within your emotions as well. For when you carry so much energy flowing through you, keeping the steadiness for so many, you want to make sure that you are taken care of first, so you can bring all of that for everyone else. In other words, be easy about it. It took some time to Kosta. This has been a flow of few minutes and then grew up to 20 minutes and 30 minutes. And first he was laying down and then he was sitting down with eyes closed. And now he's sitting down, soon to start standing up eventually when the events of bigger kind started coming through, because that becomes more and more and more natural. But also learning about some of these shifts that are coming through, that your focus will want to rush so much sometimes after this place of unfocus, that is, if there is any suggestion, the most precious time for you to take the time for. And so you get to the wider perspective as re-emerging into focus, taking your time to be soft about it, so you don't get startled by too many questions and cause yourself more question or discomfort that it's unnecessary. And so when it comes to the other part of the conversation that you were having, is you being in a place of pulling so wide in a wider perspective that specific feelings and thoughts in the experiences of the ones that are non-physical in a form that it's known, but picking up the sense and picking up that which is wider perspective. This is what happens with all of the relationships. You are never really interacting with someone from the place of self. You're generating the questions from a place of self, but you are really interacting with the essence of everything that exists. That is the common thread. And regardless of you being now physically in the vicinity, in a different part of the planet, unfocused from that physical iteration in a new physical iteration, or roaming around everythingness while you're getting ready, which is usually a short period of time, you have an opportunity through every single time the thought comes through for this person. That person is engaging in that which is the essence. You just might be that which is medium, or you might be the vessel for them to see what they've been already experienced at all times. And you might be able to speak that which they can hear at all times on their own too. In other words, every thought of someone, regardless of being physically focused or not, is a mutual in nature, whether you even know that person or ever knew that person or not.
Yeah, I often feel like I know every single one of my clients, or even Kosta now looking at him or anyone. I often feel like what's coming through is a bit surreal. Is there any way that
It is surreal for your perspective of self. It is the only thing you can experience from a wider perspective. So as you're dancing between the perspectives in the brilliance of work that you want to bring to others, in other words, you are steady so much so, not that this is sufficient only for you to use it for you and few people around you, but for anyone that can benefit for them to discover and develop this experience within themselves too. In other words, not that you need to train anyone for them to make a living out of this, but for them to recognize this wider perspective that they are, because you are not physical hooked up to non-physical. You are divine, embodied, expressing itself. You're not the lens of your body. You're not the lens of your mind. You're not the emotion. That is the real thing for you. But that which is wider perspective is shining through that. Well, that's really what's going on.
Is there any way I can increase my vibration or make those in spirit communicate easier with me for my clients to bring in their messages more clearer?
And so what do you think is not working at the moment?
I think it's my own head. It's the brain.
The only thing that it's working is that you're trying to measure something that it cannot be measured. In other words, you're saying, well, I'm coming through and my hookup has some little mice chewed up on the cable. That's my hookup. And that's never the case, because there's nothing to hook up. It's all wireless at all times.
Right. But how can I guess, differentiate between the thoughts that I get from my own mind and the thoughts that...
the same way we told you about the other part of the equation, which is that you get to the place of wider perspective, not really worrying about, is this going to cause question or bring the answer to the person that is reflected to. In that moment, you allow your mind really to go, because your mind wants to dissect. Your mind wants to solve problems. Your mind wants to think. It wants to hook up with the thinking. Well, the wider perspective that you the wider perspective that you are and that you want to access so steadily so others can have reflection right now is past that. These experiences are wider. These thoughts that are coming through are Kosta pulled up in the wider perspective. You are asking the question, and then the thought comes through that which is from wider perspective in. It is not like you're trying to pull the thought down, and that's what may feel to you like you're trying to pull the thought down with your head, and your head can never even reach it, little less to pull it down. So what you're looking for is to allow your head to levitate, to allow your mind to really be so softer so you can be wider and wider and wider perspective. Think about it. When you're focused, you are on the street. When you get a little more unfocused, you can see the corner of several streets. When you get to the place even wider, zoom out, you see the whole neighborhood. Then you zoom out, then you see the whole quarter. Then you zoom out, you see the whole city. Then you zoom out, you see the whole state. Then you zoom out and see the whole country. Then you zoom out and see the whole continent. Then you zoom out and see the whole planet. Then you zoom out, you continue zooming out. In other words, to get to that place where you're so wider, and then choosing which way you want to deliver the message based off of the questions, not choosing you, but what they're asking as reflection always comes exactly where it's supposed to go.
Right, okay. And sometimes I doubt myself because the information that I get is so clear. I can see the auras, I can feel, I already know about the person, what's happening.
You're not worried about the information that's coming through. That is clear to you as a day. You're looking now about the measurement of how is it going to perceive, and that's none of your business.
Yeah, okay, I understand. Yeah.
It is none of your business. It is none of your business because you will never experience it from a place of self. Instead of thinking for you to be even a guide or assistant, look at yourself as a vessel for reflection. And for once you see that, there cannot be anything but more of that which the person that is looking for a reflection that they get. Because as you're in a wider perspective and as you see it clearly as it is, you being okay to say it as it is really what you're looking to find for more and more of your balance. In other words, you cannot control from the place of self how someone is going to receive something in their own place of self. But you can guide them through your steadiness and example of them for them to see it from a wider perspective. And therefore, it's always beneficial.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it so much.
Brilliant, brilliant journey you've shared with everyone. Excellent conversation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Go ahead. Are ready for more?
I think
Marie.
I'm next. Hello. First time here, so thank you for your time. I'll just put my camera on, that a bit easier. I just wanted to check the different timelines that we can experience here on Earth. And with those timelines, how do they work?
With every thought that you have, in other words, you, in order to see the timeline, you pull in a wider perspective and choose where you want to dip. In other words, you get unfocused and then choose where you want to dip. And this is what people talk about, variety of multidimensional experience. Think of it on a very simple example of the past, usually easy for you to understand because something had happened, something is documented, and you making a choice about it. In other words, you get to the wider perspective and then you choose the thought that you have. You think about an event, you think about the situation, you think about the feeling. Well, now you're in that timeline. Kosta has been talking to a friend, a student in dance, and they talked about this student's cousin that has a very interesting Instagram page that Kosta got to take a look at. And Kosta was saying, this person is living in a completely different timeline, in a completely different universe. It's like this person is right now, at this moment, in this current state. You can see him and his friends being in that state, but even visually, based off of the photos, of the activity, of the things and thoughts that's been shared, living in a completely different timeline, maybe 50 years prior, or you can think of it as so many years after, who knows? Because at that moment, this person is making their own choices, making their own creation, not through the visual representation only, but that is only expression of the choices that you are making, not the mind you, not the body you, not the emotion you, but you, wider perspective, dipping in and out. And so you can go into the timeless to then choose the timeline.
So people who, I'm a therapist and I'm very intuitive with them, but I've also got the intellect that I'm fighting to let go of, to go into the timeline to tune. So people that have got remote viewing skills, people that I'm dealing with who have shared the stories of going through the MK Ultra programs and ritual abuse and things like that. Where do I go with them and their timelines to support them as well?
You get them to the place of steady first, no matter what topic gets them there. In other words, you make sure that they're steady. You get them to guide them to say, there's so many things that brought you to be who you really are right now. So many events are shaping all of us at all times. And some of them are painful. Some of them are distracting. Some of them are joyful. Some of them are lovely. And so at this moment, we're going to try to bring you to as much to now as we can. In other words, I will guide you through the set of things, how to activate positive memory activation, something that's going to bring you within that which is steadiness. In other words, whatever tool gets you there, whatever tool gets you to feel a little bit of ease, whatever tool gets you to feel a little bit unfocused, whatever tool gets you to be more in the place of relaxation and bliss and steadiness and ease. And once they see that they have the tool to get to the steady, that they have the topics that can get them to the steady with your guidance or eventually on their own, that would be the time to start looking into some of those mirrors that are being covered. Mirrors being that abusive situation, mirror being that trauma. In other words, any of those things are there for them to resolve, but not to fully ignore it for the rest of their lives, because they will not be able to do that. It will come up for this, it will come up through this, it will come up through that. But you also don't want to get head on to that before they feel steady. In other words, you show them that they can be steady. You show them and allow them to develop the tools to be steady. So it's kind of covering some of the mirrors in the beginning. And then once you sense that you're steady, you start allowing them to play with how much of that curtain they can open, and then be satisfied with as much as they open and bring them back to steady. And when they're ready, opening a little bit more and bring them back to steady. And eventually they will feel so comfortable, they will be able to resolve little by little by little by little some of these experiences, because what you've been doing to begin with is giving them tools for unfocusing, for as unfocusing of the mind that wants to dissect and solve the problems for survival of your body first, and then as a simple habit of doing that, will become softer and softer. In other words, it will not be all the time intense. It will be sometimes intense and softer, sometimes intense and softer, sometimes intense and softer, sometimes intense and softer. And in knowing that it can get softer, then they will be more prone to go and look into some of those experiences from this softer place, and not from the place of mind and the trauma that they're memorizing it at. Once you get them to have a little bit of this dance, they will see who they really are, this wider perspective, the person behind the lens and not lens on its own.
So even though they've got multiple personalities, it's to work with each individual personalities to get them softer with the others?
All of those personalities are getting there because they want softer mind. All of those personalities are there because they're looking to soften up the identity with all of that which might be trauma. And so what you want to get them is to find the place of easy and steady, and the easy and steady, knowing that some of them might choose to stay in this state, but you can get them to be in a more steady and more steady and more steady place. Whereas you going head on to anything without steady can just emphasize that which is already happened.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Be easy about this process, and as wide as you can get in the place of your inclusiveness, of knowing that there is nothing wrong with these people, that there is nothing wrong with these clients, that they're having their own discovery, and that more you can be inclusive in understanding that their discovery is okay, they will find the resonance with that too. More you keep that steady, more they will want to join you to your steady. And then one tool after another, one success after another, they will be not looking to put anything together that's been broken, but find more dance between their focus and unfocus, and with that see who they truly are. A movement of question and answer embodied in eternal dance for more and more and more and more of that which is divine experience.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Really, really excellent conversation.
Thank you.
Go ahead. We'll take more questions if there are some.
Is it me again, Armand?
Go ahead. It is you.
Hi, WEOLA. First of all, I wanted to let you know that while we were talking about my son earlier, after our conversation, I went out to get a glass of water, And I found out that my son was calling me while we were talking. So
And
I don't know
so
what it,
you were in a place of such inclusiveness that there was no other way for this to happen, because your inclusiveness was so enticing, he could not bear not to be part of it.
Okay, that's beautiful. Thank you. Now, my next question is more of a curiosity question. 2 weeks ago, I was doing my journaling in the morning, and I had this experience that I had never experienced before. I was writing, but it didn't feel like I was writing. It was like it was just my hand was just writing. And I heard the message very clearly at a certain point where it said, you are eternal and you get to choose how you spend your eternalness. That was the biggest aha moment for me. And it continued on to tell me that as I was writing it, it was writing itself. It was telling me that I exist not just in this body, but I exist simultaneously in many other forms. And that eternalness is assured because I exist in the flower, in the air, in the raindrop, and anywhere else in this world. Now, I would like to ask WEOLA if I could have a rampage on that subject, because it was so delicious for me that knowing that I continue to exist even after this body is finished.
Well, we'll start there by saying that you are that light behind the lens. And when you get for that to be predominant, that's when you feel like the words are coming out and you're writing them. This is how the thoughts are coming through right now to Kosta. In other words, these are not his opinions and judgments. We're teasing sometimes with the memory bank of him, this being the wider perspective of all being one. And so that which is reflection of you and reflection of someone else, back to you and back to you and back to you, you can see it as something different. You can see it as something that's reflecting to you, or you can see it as a different angle of you. And so you want to say, and you want to know that you are at all times dancing, moving, flowing in eternalness of that which is your question and answer dance. You're consistently looking for more trouble and discovery based off of that in your place of ease and satisfaction and love. You're eager for every single moment in time happening, not only now, in the now, but for all eternal nows. For as you are one of the whole, in other words, you are the same as the whole. You have access to all of that whole at all times, because you're continuously seeing it from this angle and this angle and this angle, and everyone else seeing it from this angle and this angle and this angle contributes to the wideness that is moving infinitely into more, into more, into more, into more. And so you get to choose from this particular stance where you're at to have access to it, or to fully be in a place of self, or to dance between the self and reflections and that which is one. And so in that dance, you're choosing how long and where predominantly you want to stay. For as you know that when you get to understand who you really are, not the physical with the inner self, but that you are that divine expressing through the inner self, captured, cocooned in this physicality, and looking to burst through and expand and shine through and express and express and express, then you know that you are that you're sometimes looking access to. In other words, that's why you have at all times that inner knowing within you, and that's why all of the answers are within you. And your simultaneous movement between dimensions and your awareness of that becomes only about your focus on focus dance. So where do you want to point the flashlight of attention? Do you want to go as wide as you can? Do you want to go narrow in pointing in one dot or a person? Or do you want to dance between realities and alternate everything as that happens with every change of your attention in as temporary of that which is your integrity and your identity with what you're giving attention to. And so as you continue moving, as you continue dancing, for as long as you're aware that you're never stuck, because there is nothing to get stuck, because you are shining through so much with everything that you want to express. At all times, you know that this dance is eternal in its nature, and you're only choosing how much you want to intensify it while you're in this and every other physical iteration. Intensify it in a sense of more and more and more inclusiveness. For as when you see the differences only at the starting point of expressing that which is divinity within you, you then can only experience what one is.
Okay. How can I experience more of that deliciousness? How can I experience this more frequently? Because when I tried to do it again on another day, I couldn't get to it.
And so you're not looking to get to this to be a state of being that you hook up and never leave. You're not looking to eliminate the question so you can be in the answer. You understand that it's always going to be the dance, and you knowing that it's always going to be consistent, incremental, and moment by moment experience that you can put speed to if you choose to, but you do not have to based off of what you have going on at that moment. And so there is no destination to choose, and now you're good for good, because for good is continuously evolving, and what's good now is just the starting point of the new good that's coming next and the next and the next. And so there is nothing to try. There is nothing to really dissect with your physical senses. There is only this dance between giving attention and withdrawing it, between focus and unfocus, between curiosity and discovery of the question, and then allowing to integrate that as, again, new starting point of more of that which is blissful experience. It does not take much, but it takes consistency. It does not take too big of a leap at the time, but it takes integration. It takes a little bit of a practice of these stances that you're experiencing for you within that movement to always be aware who you are. Not physical, looking to get to non-physical, but non-physical embodied and experiencing it through the perfection of its integration.
Okay, that's beautiful. One last question, and it's more of a curiosity as well. When we were talking earlier,
we want to ask you, what do you think is the difference between the question and curiosity? What is the difference between problem and question and curiosity?
Well, I think that when I ask a question about a specific subject, then it's more about me. When it's a curiosity, I'm interested in something else, somebody else. I'm interested in somebody else.
You're making the difference between curiosity and the question from a place of self. From a wider perspective, it's all the same. You start with curiosity and get to the question, and sometimes go to the question, sometimes even go to the problem, back to the question, so you can move on into the place of a solution or ease or love, satisfaction, any positive emotion to receive the answers. But from a wider perspective, it's leading up to how intense the question gets is the only difference. And all of those curiosities and wonder and questions are different layers of it. We just thought that would be interesting for you to hear.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. That's clear. So what I was going to ask is, when you were talking to somebody earlier about her being able to access people who have crossed over, when Abraham Hicks talked about Jerry coming through or Wayne Dyer coming through, I am curious whether Kosta has experienced anything like that, where someone that he loves that has crossed over might have wanted to have a chat with him. And do they also have thoughts the way us physical beings have thoughts?
Well, first we want to bring to your attention is that this timeline in between physical iterations is often not as long. In other words, sometimes takes a bit of time, but you're rushing to go back to integration because of deliciousness of the experience. And so since that is the case, oftentimes you say, I'm bringing the essence of something, but you're assuming that this person is not physically focused again, that this person is not, but the essence of a wider perspective of that which is internalness of you is physically focused too. In other words, you might not know what it is, and you might not know exactly how to recognize it, but the essence of it is there. The essence of it and the movement in the timelines are irrelevant, because at any time, this essence that you knew about someone being in their role of their physicality, you were always interacting with the essence, with a wider perspective of it, because you could never really interact from the place of self and trying to be in their shoes of their perspective of self. And so this continuous movement is just tuning in through that which is the essence of that, which that combination of that time, combination of integrated physical, not physical was, and tuning into the non-physical part. Not distribute, but this practice. So focus on focus is getting you there at all times. And when you go to the wider perspective, you have access to everything and everyone. In other words, not to their perceptions of self. You cannot get into somebody else's head and see their thoughts. You cannot really control them that way. You cannot be into somebody's place of self, but you can meet them in a place of one. You can meet them in a wider perspective. And that's all that's happening when you're tuning into specifics, as the person who is bringing the question part of it brings that essence through to flow through someone who is receptive, as the Kosta is right now.
That is so exciting, because what I got from that is that it is entirely possible for my father, who has crossed over, to be focused on, in physical form right now, this minute. And also my mother, who is still here in physical form, but cannot hold a conversation anymore because of her dementia. I can still have a conversation with her.
And so we'll take it even further with you. And so we'll take it even further with you. So here you were, your father physically focused, and you interacting with each other, often distracted by physicality, but interacting in the essence of one another. Well, there is a new form. Now you've been looking for a different way, from this wider perspective. When you have a thought about your father, you get to the wider perspective of having that thought. You're not having a thought about his physicality, because that's not true anymore. So there is this, so you go into one wider perspective. Well, wherever your father is now in a physical experience, that mutuality is there at that moment of that essence being in a wider perspective too. It's always mutual. It's always mutual, even if you do not know the person. So let's say you have a favorite singer, and you think of that favorite singer. You think that you're thinking of their physicality and self, but what you're interacting with is the essence. So you're in a wider perspective, and that person gets into that wider perspective without even knowing physical you. That is how you're interacting. In other words, you can be having these experiences and somebody that way being your best friend, because your best friend is not in a comparison of self. Your best friend is because of this wider perspective that you're dancing in at all times. And so it becomes rather easy to understand when you put it this way.
Yes, yes, yes. It makes sense that I feel my father's presence every time I'm happy. When I'm laughing, I always hear him laughing in my head, because he's a very funny man and he loves jokes. So every time I hear a new joke, I always think of him and I want to share the joke with him. And so, yeah, that makes me really happy. Thank you so much. Thanks, Kosta. Thanks, WEOLA.
Really, really excellent conversations. Go ahead.
Lindsay, go ahead.
She might have fallen asleep.
Oh, maybe. Okay. Well, I think we're good, right? Anyone else has questions?
Thank you so much, guys. That was amazing.
In the appreciation of your wonderful questions, are there more questions?
Yes. How do you know?
Jasmine.
Yes, one more. So my thinking has always been that psychics and mediums, that we've got that we can connect with that bridge between the physical and the non-physical. Are people like myself who use this type of energy here to bring light into the world?
What you're looking is to share what you've discovered, which is that you're predominantly this light embodied. Even if you look at your physical cells, they're mostly that which is empty space. They're mostly that which is non-physical. And so you will now have found the resonance with that to be able to dance between focus and unfocus, and you're shining light to others to find that. And therefore to find more and more inclusion of others, seeing others not only as separate, not only as a reflection of each other, but really one. In other words, understanding all of that oneness coming through at all times.
Okay, so keep doing that, encouraging people to realize that we are all light, that we are all here for the contrast and non-contrast, and
what we want to
experience
bring to your attention is that that which is variety and integration of that variety is really what's happening. Observe variety, integrate, move on to ask more questions, bring the answers, have time to focus, unfocus. But also what we want to bring to you is that there is really no bridge between physical and non-physical, because it's also integrated. In other words, it is this non-physical wrapped in physical. So therefore that fine line of you calling it a bridge, or some calling it the leading edge or cutting edge, or whichever the way it used, it is just the awareness of pointing the flashlight of attention. In other words, it's the ones that are there dancing through in between that they see that there is really no difference. And so you do not want to see it from a perspective of you being that bridge, even though in the beginning you might be, but rather the reflection to others that allows them to start moving the cursor of their own flashlight of attention, sometimes in focus, most of the time in focus, and occasionally sufficiently out of the focus so they can be reminded of who they are.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Really, really excellent conversations. Really, really, today's experience brought a lot of knowing to so many, not only to the ones on this call, but so many more that will be interacting with some of the materials that come through. In appreciation of your wonderful quest to never be satisfied, and therefore looking for satisfaction in every now at a time, to bring more of that which is you into everything that exists, and therefore everything that exists back into physicality for now. That's it.
Thank you so much. Wow.
Oh my gosh, thank you.